Hello, we're Group 25. I'm Siti, and this is GainH Insights, our look at how AI gets covered in global news headlines for social and web analytics. As a quick overview, I'll be covering the motivation and dataset, then Nurish will be doing the literature review, Rananjoy on methodology, Dana with results and discussion, and lastly, I'll wrap up with conclusions and next steps. Now, artificial intelligence is impossible to avoid in the news these days. Healthcare, jobs, regulation, you name it. The coverage shapes how the public understands and reacts to AI, which is why we've chosen it as our topic for analysis. We're using the Global Artificial Intelligence News Headlines Corpus, or GainH Corpus for short. It's a Harvard Dataverse dataset built by Samuel and colleagues at Rutgers. It has 3 datasets, but we're only using the first one, which has over 60,000 AI-related headlines, pulled ultimately from Google News RSS, spanning January 2020 to early December 2023. It's scoped to the US search region, but is actually multilingual with Korean, Japanese, French, and other languages right alongside English news articles. 3 questions drove this project. The first is, what are these headlines actually about? What tone do they carry? As in, is AI coverage more hopeful or more anxious, positive or negative sentiment? How has the volume and shape of that coverage changed, especially since ChatGPT launched? And we also pushed a bit further in asking, can a machine learning model learn to predict the tone on its own? And does an unsupervised model, like LDA, without being told our themes, independently arrive at a similar picture? And moving on, I'll pass it on to Nurish to handle the literature review.
For our literature review, we look at 12 peer-reviewed studies published between 2019 and 2006, all focused on how global news media frame artificial intelligence. Across those 12, the researchers used 3 broad approaches: manual thematic coding, LDA topic modeling, and transformer-based NLP methods like BERT topic and NER. That variety turned out to work in our favor because the strongest finding from this review shows up consistently regardless of which approach a study used. That finding is that attention to AI in the news doesn't build up slowly. It spikes whenever something major happens. Study 1 found roughly a tenfold rise in AI media attention within just 6 months of ChatGPT's launch, and that wasn't one off either. Study 6 found similar spikes around BART's and Bing's 2023 launches, while Study 12 recorded explosive coverage growth in Chile once ChatGPT went mainstream there too. So across very different countries and outlets, the pattern keeps repeating itself. Coverage moves in bursts tied to specific events rather than growing steadily on its own. It's not just the volume of coverage that shifts either. The tone changes too once attention picks up, and that's where things get interesting. Study 9 found that benefit-oriented parametric reporting actually dominated across 4 decades of AI coverage. So historically, the story being told was a fairly optimistic one. But since ChatGPT, that's flipped. Both Study 1 and Study 3 find the tone hardening toward risk, with surveillance, misinformation, and job displacement now dominating the conversation. So put together, it's not just that AI is getting talked about more, it's that the way it's being talked about has gotten a lot more anxious. Now, going through all 12 studies side by side didn't just tell us what researchers already know, it also made the gaps in that knowledge pretty obvious. And those gaps are really what shape our own methodology. The first gap is around scope. Most of these studies stay fairly narrow. Some look only at US and UK outlets, one looks only at Dutch language coverage, and Study 4 covers just 8 outlets across 4 countries. Study 8 goes even further and works from a single 5-month window. Therefore, the advantage of our data set, which is GainH, specifically is broader from the start, pulling from multiple languages and multiple sources, and covering a full 3 years from 2020 to 2023. The second gap is a bit more methodological. It's honestly the one that influenced us the most. Study 4 directly compared manual coding against automated analysis on the same data set, and the two approaches actually landed on different answers. Manual coding placed journalists at the center of the AI debate at 62.6%, while the automated approach instead placed political actors at the center at 32.8%. That's because algorithms are simply better at spotting name entities than they are at picking up on subtler framing. So rather than leaning on one automated method the way earlier studies did, we cross-check ours. We use VEDA for sentiment, which sits in the same role-based family as an approach used in study 2, which was SentiStrength. And it sidesteps the mismatch between a transformer model trained on tweets and the news text we're actually working with, which is a problem study 6 ran into. And for themes, we don't just take our keyword categories at face value either. We cross-check them against LDA output, and the third gap is probably the most direct one. None of the 12 studies actually build a predictive model, and study 2 even names this outright as a limitation of their own work. So that gap becomes a specific target for our contribution, which is a supervised TF-IDF classifier and trained across four models using a stratified train and test split, fivefold cross-validation, and hyperparameter tuning.
Hello, my name is Rananjoy Barua, and I'm going to do the methodology. Part one is research design and data pipeline. Our study uses quantitative research design to analyze global AI news coverage from 2020 to 2023 using the Harvard Gain Age corpus. We started with 60,168 records during preprocessing. We checked missing values, removed 6 URL related columns, eliminated 483 duplicates, validated dates, and repaired encoding issues. This resulted in 59,679 clean headlines, which were then prepared for NLP analysis. We also used random seed 42 to ensure reproducibility. Part 2 is labeling and theme classification. Next, we perform Uh, sentiment and theme classification. For sentiment, we use Vader, classifying headline as positive, neutral, and or negative based on compound score thresholds. We also developed a keyword-based classifier to assign headlines into 11 predefined themes, such as Gen AI, healthcare, education, and cybersecurity. Finally, we used LDA topic modeling with 4, 6, and 8 topic and compare the results with our manual theme for validation. The next part is supervised classification and evaluation. For supervised classification, we converted the headlines into TF-IDF feature using unigrams and bigrams. We used a stratified 80-20 train test split and compared four models: NAIP-based, logistics regression, linear SVM, and random forest. The models were evaluated were using accuracy, precision, recall, and F1 score. We also used cross-validation and hyperparameter analysis to assess their stability. Finally, we analyzed the 2023 publication trends using November as a reference point. We then applied a linear regression to estimate growth and forecast headline volume 6 months ahead. The enriched dataset was then exported to Power BI to create an interactive dashboard covering trends, sentiment themes, sources, languages, and key indicators. Overall, this methodology takes us from raw data through pre-processing and machine learning to forecasting and visualization. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dana, and I'll be walking you through our results and discussion section, covering how AI related news coverage evolved across nearly 60,000 headlines from 2020 to 2023. Starting with the basics, sentiment across the corpus leaned mildly positive. 47.5% of headlines were positive, 40.4% neutral, and just 12.1% negative. But it's worth noting the median sentiment score was exactly zero, meaning the positive link came from a subset of strongly positive headlines, not a uniformly upbeat tone throughout. Thematically, generative AI dominated coverage at 24.2%, followed by product launches and hardware at 20.8%. Both themes concentrated heavily in 2023. That 2023 concentration lines up with a clear structural shift in coverage volume. Headlines grew at an average of about 9% per month, and a log linear regression explained nearly 78% of that monthly variation, with October 2023 standing out as the single busiest month following ChatGPT's launch in November 2022. This coverage wasn't limited to a handful of outlets either. We found over 8,200 distinct sources spanning English, Korean, Japanese, Spanish, and French language headlines. To predict sentiment automatically, we trained and compared four classifiers. Linear SVM came out on top, reaching 89.7% accuracy before tuning, an F1 score of about 0.905 after. Random forest and logistic regression followed closely, while naive-based trailed by roughly 9 points, but every single model shared the same weakness. Negative headlines, which made up only about 12% of data, were much harder to correctly recall. around 66% for our best model, a class imbalance problem, not a flaw in any one algorithm. Separately, we used LDA topic modeling as an independent unsupervised check on our 11 manually defined themes. 6 topics gave the clearest, most distinct groupings, and reassuringly, several themes lined up well with what LDA found on its own. For example, arts and entertainment concentrated 39% into a topic centered on generative AI and language models, while our generative AI theme itself split fairly evenly across two related topics, suggesting real but imperfect overlap between the two schemes. All of this fits into a 4-page interactive Power BI dashboard, which also surfaced a new preliminary signal. Simplified Chinese sources were about 2.5 times more likely to carry negative sentiment than the corpus average, worth flagging, though based on a fairly small language subset. Stepping back, 4 of our 5 research objectives were substantially met. The one clear gap was geographic. Our dataset's country field carried no real variation, so a genuine cross-country comparison wasn't possible. Our approach also directly echoes prior work by Zai and his colleagues, who triangulated manual and automated classification, and by adding a supervised classifier evaluated on held out data, we addressed a gap none of the 12 studies we reviewed had filled. Overall, the results show AI coverage didn't just grow, it transformed in scale, tone, and theme, alongside the technology itself.
So, pulling it all together across 60,000 plus headlines from 2020 to 2023, coverage grew roughly about 9% a month, and that growth accelerated after ChatGPT launched. The overall tone read mildly positive, with about 48% positive headlines, 40% neutral, and only 12% which are negative. We tested a pattern with a tune support vector machine, the SVM, which reproduced Vader's own sentiment labels with an F1 score of 0.905. And when we ran an independent unsupervised topic model, LDA, it landed on roughly similar groupings to the 11 themes we defined by hand. That means those themes aren't arbitrary. Instead, they reflect the structure in how AI gets covered. But it's not perfect, and negative headlines are still the hardest for any models to catch reliably. Our own sentiment ground truth is Veda's own scoring is not independently verified by humans. Going forward, the natural next steps are validating our forecast against real data Greenwich already has in the second dataset, tackling that class imbalance more directly, and letting headlines carry more than one theme at once, since a lot of AI coverage generally straddles categories, such as policy and generative AI categories simultaneously. And that's all from us today. Thank you for your time and attention.